Who was Isabella of Valois, the child bride of Richard II and the youngest ever queen consort in English history? This documentary will look into the life and events during Isabella's life to discover who she was and what happened during her tenure as queen consort. Isabella and Richard would develop a caring and loving relationship. Although due to the vast age gap between them it would be a platonic relationship. And their relationship was more like father-daughter or uncle and niece. Richard would show Isabella great respect and Isabella would look forward to Richard's regular visits to her at Windsor Castle. Here he would lavish her with gifts and toys befitting her age, and engage in entertainment and humour for both Isabella and her ladies-in-waiting. Despite their relationship being platonic, a politically arranged marriage and their vast difference in age, which led him to be unable to consummate the marriage. There is no evidence that Richard II had any mistress during this period. This is not to say there were any mistress during any period of his life, just that there is nothing that has been documented. It could be possible that Richard did have a lover, especially as his first wife had died. But due to his controlling nature he could have easily kept this secret. When Isabella was a mere 9 years old, great political movements started to shift her fortune in life. Whether she would have been mentally aware of what was happening is quite doubtful, as for a child so young much would have been kept from her, particularly for her own safety. In May 1939, Isabella was moved to Porchester Castle on the south coast near Portsmouth in Hampshire. Isabella was moved for her own safety and protection, whilst her husband, Richard, went on a much controversial military campaign in Ireland. In the meantime, in France, her father would lose the throne of France when her uncle, Louis I, Duke of Orleans, would claim the regency of the French throne due to her father's increasing mental health issues. The change on leadership on the throne would have a negative effect on Isabella. Her uncle decided to allow the return of her husband's cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, to return from his exile in Brittany to England. Due to Louis believing the country's relationship with England was no longer in the interests of France. Henry Bolingbroke was a man with a grievance with Isabella's husband. This was due to Richard seizing the Lancastrian lands of Bolingbroke's father, John of Gaunt, who had passed away earlier in the year. Bolingbroke, on his return, would draw support from many lords in England and managed to take power in the country with little resistance. Bolingbroke, on his return, would draw support from many lords in England and managed to take power in the country with little resistance. Edmund Langley, Duke of York, another son of Edward III and uncle to both Richard and Henry, would eventually side with the latter. Edmund would move Isabella around the country, firstly to Wallingford Castle and later to Leeds Castle near Maidstone in Kent. On his return to England, on 19 August 1399, Richard would surrender to Henry and eventually imprisoned in the Tower London on 1 September that year. Bolingbroke would be crowned Henry IV of England on Sunday 13 October 1399, which was coincidentally the feast day of Edward the Confessor. Isabella was kept as a virtual prisoner by this stage the Bishop of Salisbury's residence, Sunning's Bishop's Palace in Reading, Berkshire. Bolingbroke would spare Isabella's husband's life following his abdication. And now kept prisoner, what would become of both Isabella and her husband? In the third and final part of this documentary we will look at the fallout of Richard's abdication and what finally became of Isabella.